Seriously. If there is anything, and by the way, no amount of, is he using a fog machine or Vaseline or both? What is happening on that screen? Did he just, when she came on, did he go, and breathe right, like, he keeps steaming up the place because she's on? Yikes! And by the way, for those of you that don't know, that's Alan Dershowitz. Let's see, Dershowitz, Epstein, just, let's see, images, just in case you're wondering, that's Alan Dershowitz, that's Jeffrey Epstein, there they are, oh, hey, there they are together again, there's the woman who accused him of sexual assault, basically at Epstein's properties. There's, there he is smiling, and lovely, and then the back and forth, and they're together in stories and stuff like that, and they're all together. He denies. Oh, that's sad. Judge denies Alan Dershowitz's motion. No, that's sad. Alan Dershowitz denies Epstein rape charge. There you go. Lovely, attractive people, just wonderful, and I don't know who this couple is, but they hung out with this couple a lot. Do you guys know who this is? I'm not familiar. His voice, I think we've heard recently, but here and this and all of this, and then this guy, and then look, and then they're all look. Oh, who's that? That's weird. They're all just, who are they hanging out with? Who are these folks? Alan Dershowitz cannot stop talking, accused of a slew of terrible things. The defense has no intention of resting. Ugh. What was that other picture with them? Who are those people? Okay, with Robert Trivers and, Larry Summers. Huh. Curious. Ugh. Just, okay. I mean, why wouldn't you hang out with a guy who literally was found guilty of solicitation of a minor and then got a key to the jail so he could come and go? But we don't have two different types of justice in this country by any means. All right, so I almost feel like this is gross. This is gross.
And joining me now is constitutional and criminal law attorney Alan Dershowitz. Professor.
Law attorney? He's a law attorney. He's the law attorney. Hold on, I've got to slide this thing up a little bit and see. There we go. So I can.
Talk to us about this case, because the jury, they weren't sequestered.
Floyd murder trial fallout. So they're asking a dude who's had to defend himself against, like, the fact that he had sensual massages at Jeffrey Epstein's house by women who were forced to do it, who were trafficked there, and is working currently with Mike Lindell on the most expensive free speech case in the history of the country. I mean, effective, worthwhile, no, but expensive, certainly. It's going to cost Mike Lindell a pretty penny. I mean, obviously, someone's got to feed Alan Dershowitz's art habit, but all right.
Sequestered until Monday. So what did they see that really?
And this is him, I guess, commenting on the whole thing as they're out.
Influenced their decision.
What influenced their decision? Couldn't be the evidence. Couldn't be seeing the video over and over and over again. It has to be the threats of riots.
Well, it's clear the jurors must have known that if they rendered a verdict other than guilty on the murder charges, they would be held responsible for.
Well, for being blind and not recognizing that the reality that was in front of them?
Causing violence and riots and perhaps even deaths. And so the heavy thumb of the potential of violence was on the scales of justice in that jury room. You know, defense attorneys like to say, if you throw a skunk in the jury box, you can get rid of the skunk, but you can't get rid of the smell.
I've heard no better analogy for bringing Alan Dershowitz onto your legal team. You can remove Alan Dershowitz from your legal team, but you can't remove the smell.
And the smell of violence was in the air.
The smell of violence Oh, yeah, it was. If you looked at the violence perpetrated on George Floyd by Derek Chauvin and the other cops involved.
They went to deliberate, and they knew, they had to know, because they weren't sequestered. They could listen to anything but, quote, the news. They had to know that Maxine Waters and Al Sharpton and others were stimulating the crowd. Look, every mayor.
But would that sway them? Would that? That's like saying, I mean, I'll use the most kind of cartoonish analogy I can do. Your favorite dessert is blueberry pie, to borrow from Al Sharpton. Blueberry pie. So your favorite, you love blueberry pie. And you haven't had blueberry pie in forever. And you haven't eaten in almost 2 days. And there's an entire meal afterwards, but you know, you have this blueberry pie in front of you and you can absolutely gorge yourself on it, and you're not going to break your diet because it has 0 calories. It's just the perfect blueberry pie. And someone puts a gun to your head and says, eat the blueberry pie. And you're like, I was going to eat the blueberry pie anyways because the blueberry pie is the most appealing thing to me and is exactly what is appropriate in this circumstance in terms of satiating me and fulfilling my dream of the perfect meal currently. So I am aware of the threat of violence, but the threat of violence only seems to be pointing in the same direction as my natural impulse in this circumstance based on my own beliefs and the reality in front of me. Does that make sense? You can't force someone to do something with violence that they were already presupposed to do by simple moral actions. You don't need to. But the illusion of it is how they make it pretend like that wasn't the reality.
And every major city knew that. Every police chief knew that. If there was,
why are you acting as the defense? This is a good concern. You're there to talk about the case in general. But why would you favor in this circumstance an imbalance of argument being brought on as a legal scholar? Why is it automatically assumed that because you're on OAN and because the host is on OAN and that you're a guest on OAN, that your argument, think about this for a second. Think about the fact that if you're going to go on and speak on OAN about the Floyd case, you're not going to talk about George Floyd's death, the validity of the state's case. You are there automatically as a member of the defense team. Why would that assumption be there? Liberty, you really don't get the analogy? What's another analogy? Let's see. You are an amazing swimmer. You can't drown. And there is a child in an above-ground swimming pool right in front of you, and the child is drowning. And someone points at you, are about to dive in and save the child because you can recognize the child is drowning. You recognize you are the person that is most fit to save the drowning child. You have every intention of saving the drowning child. You believe the child is drowning and should be saved. And someone walks up and says, if you don't jump in and save that child, I'm going to burn down your house. Would that sway your opinion about whether or not you're going to, would you now be more inclined? You don't have to be more inclined to do something you're already inclined to do because of the circumstances that are in front of you and your capabilities and your own moral choices and ethical beliefs in a circumstance. You do not need to put a gun to my head and threaten me with violence to do something that seems clear in terms of a path towards justice and the obvious, beyond a reasonable doubt circumstance. It's in a courtroom.
There was a verdict other than murder.
Yes, Foggy would have already jumped in and saved the kid. Right. That's essentially the circumstance. That's what the jurors did. They're like, yeah, not only is he guilty of this, he's guilty of this and this.
There would be violence, and so the jurors knew it. And they rendered the only verdict they could render without...
No, that's not true. They certainly could have rendered another verdict. They could have given him manslaughter. They could have given him second-degree murder or third-degree murder, but not on the second or manslaughter thing, and let him just be sentenced to one aspect of it. They had three. They had three options where they could have chose like each one, then all three, then two of the three in any different grouping. They could have also they could have declared that they were hung on any individual one while declaring guilty on two of them, or innocent on one and guilty of the other. They had dozens of ways this could have come out based on the evidence that they saw in front of them that they very well may have believed would have affected violence in some way or mitigated violence. They go, well, we find him guilty of second-degree murder, we can blow off the other two because that's the worst one. And we don't really think he's guilty, but, to keep our houses from burning down. I mean, ultimately, if you're going to make an argument that they were manipulated by violence into the judgment that they came to, then they go with the most egregious one, blow off the other two because they don't think the case was proved, but they're worried about the violence part, and they figure if we just send him away for the worst thing, it's over.
Without putting their own lives, their own safety, their own health, their own children at risk. That's not the way the justice system is supposed to operate. Look, what Chauvin did was inexcusable.
Well, then stop excusing it, fucktard. You're literally...
And he should be held to account. And
He was. He is. They did.
I think what he did was manslaughter. But the idea of...
There you go. He thinks it was manslaughter. Wasn't a murder of opportunity. He didn't stay on someone's neck and allow them to die, and then didn't do anything after he knew that that his heart had stopped and he'd stopped breathing. That's murder, by the way. Other cops have been found guilty of murder for doing that very thing. 2 cops that shot a guy and didn't treat him for his wounds were found guilty of murder for not administering first aid in a timely fashion, even though they weren't guilty of shooting him because he deserved to be shot. But once he had survived the shooting, they had a responsibility to provide aid because of their job and what they do. They protect and serve part. And so they had a responsibility in a man who is now on the downward slope of humanity, meaning wounded and unable to tend to his own wounds. They had a responsibility to take that over. They are now emissaries of the state, not administrators of the state. And therefore, they have that as a co-equal responsibility, and they were found guilty of murder for doing just that.
Perhaps the jury elevating it to murder because of the threats of outside forces raises real questions that will be appealed by the defense attorneys in this case.
Yeah, of course they're going to appeal it. Who gives a shit? That's what they do all the time. How many appeals did Bundy have?
Right, and there was already pressure on them even coming into this trial.
Yeah.
So why do you think the judge
there was
didn't
so much pressure
them from the
coming into this? I mean, how do you even?
Beginning, even for their own safety.
Yeah. They don't really, who can watch that video and come to any other conclusion than Derek Chauvin was the victim here? Huh?
He made a serious error of judgment. And I think the Supreme Court should take this case eventually and issue a ruling that whenever there are racial tensions and threats of violence from a verdict, the jury must be, not maybe, but must be sequestered as a matter of constitutional law. Look, the Maxine Waters and Al Sharptons of the world have a constitutional right to protest, even to protest in front of the courthouse. But they have no right to have their threats influence the jury. And so the obvious way of giving them their...
Again, this goes... I stand by my analogy. Let's just say I stand by my analogy.
Rights and not endangering the rights of criminal defendants is to sequester the jury. Let them protest, but let the jury not hear it. And what happened in this case is they protested, they threatened, they intimidated.
It was over the course of a year. It didn't just happen. The story around, and by the way, it wasn't related to that case. The protest that they were seeing on the streets in that particular sense had to do with another case.
Intimidated.
Where's their proof that the comments influenced the jury? The only proof I've seen is to the contrary, in that they did interview one of the jurors, and she's like, no, we dealt with the facts of this case. Like, we were worried about the danger of it. Maybe, because people were popping off and it was a little scary because she could hear it from her house, but not that there was enough evidence. They didn't need to be swayed.
They hung the sword of Damocles over their
They hung the sword of Damocles over their head. What an asshole.
head of the jurors, and the jurors learned about it because the judge made a constitutional error by not sequestering them right from the beginning.
And what's unbelievable now is the case, rather than being over, it gives them grounds now to appeal the case. So it doesn't even help heal the wounds by actually closing it and having people move on, because now there's going to be an appeal. Now, as you say, the
There was always going to be an appeal.
Supreme Court will probably take it out.
No, they won't.
So then is it going to be thrown out just because the
No.
judge made a serious misjudgment here?
No, because there is no evidence that the jurors were swayed by that. And the insistence that they had to be is absurd.
The irony would be if the Supreme Court reversed this conviction and cited the Ku Klux Klan cases of the 1910s, 20s, and 30s, where prominent public officials on the wrong side of the segregation issue, Maxine Waters is on the right side, but cited those cases and said the tactic is the same. As a public official, you can't stand in front of the courthouse and speak to the jury and threaten the jury and tell
They didn't threaten the jury.
them that if they come to a verdict that you disapprove of, you're going to foment violence on the streets. That's not the way the criminal justice system should operate.
Well, that's not what she said, so I think we're cool.
Well, it's so sad to see how much the social media is impacting now these cases. It should be you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And it's,
obviously, everything that we say about Joe Biden on this, in terms of, from the baby eating pedivore to the dementia argument, I mean, there's no evidence of it, but we can say it.
And it's you don't have that anymore because now it's public perception of the case versus what's actually going on.
Yeah. Once people see all the evidence with the same level that everyone else has seen the evidence, she does know the entire trial was televised, right?
Well, about 6 months ago, I wrote a book called Guilt by Accusation. How
Ew.
difficult it is to prove innocence in the age of Me Too, in the age of identity, politics, in the age of people demanding justice. And justice is fairness. And you can't get a fair verdict when the jury believes that if they were to acquit or if they were to find a lesser account, then the violence would occur on the streets.
Well, there's no indication that they felt that way, and there's every indication that they looked at the evidence and went, can we go first degree on this? We gave them all three. If you'd have just gone for murder one, it would have you would have made an argument that all three of those combined are a level of guilt in terms of justice and fairness that are equal to a count of murder one.
Yeah, it's
Ew, don't fucking smile, because your book is about covering your ass when you hung out with Epstein, and I do mean hung out. Blech.
unbelievable what's actually
Oh, God, the fact that this dude is even around.
Great to be with you, Dick.
happened with this case, seeing what's going on, where it should have been all about the facts, but instead it became so politicized that
It did?
I like wood.
How did it become so politicized? It's obviously it deals with the public, and the remedy comes within our system of government, which would require a certain amount of politics as people in different stations try to come up with a solution or avoid a solution or mitigate between a solution desired and a solution expressed in terms of do it locally, do it on a federal level. That is the politics of it. That's required to solve the issue in a democracy. So obviously,
Stop using the word democracy.
I apologize. What word would you like me to use?
I like wood.
I'm not saying that.
What?
It's true. All right.
Deeper and longer.
Quit it.
You really do feel bad for the jury in this case. They were...
Yeah, don't you? I mean, they really wanted to let Chauvin go, but they were just scared.
Putting an
And they wouldn't even send him home with a copy of the tape.
impossible situation. Their names weren't leaked, but we saw the articles that were coming out about them saying their ages, their race, their gender, where they actually worked. So they were going to be doxxed if they didn't arrive at this verdict. So it's really sad.
Yeah. But your insinuation is that if they hadn't come to this verdict, that would have been the right thing, and that they would have been doxxed in that circumstance because they did the right thing. Whereas I think the other feeling might be that they would have been doxxed because even though they clearly saw evidence and the defense made the biggest like shit the bed defense I think I've ever seen. I mean, if Chauvin has cause for appeal, it's incompetence in his defense lawyer. Although what the judges will say is, you hired him, you could have fired him. That's your ass. You made the best defense you could. You can't just blame it on them.
Sad to see what's actually happened in this case on their side, because there was a ton of pressure going on, and you want the results to be free and fair, even in the worst cases of the worst criminals. And you as a defense attorney know this defense really didn't have the best situation going for them.
Yeah, they did not have the best situation going for them. You know what the best situation going for you in a defense trial, and when you're defending someone, is that they're innocent. See, because that would be the best. Is Your Honor, the state has no case, and he was in the Bahamas when my client was in Cancun with Ted Cruz when the murder occurred. That's your best case scenario. Is you're innocent. So yeah, they did not have the best situation.
Without a doubt,
without a doubt, they did not have the best. Quite the opposite, actually.
Even President Biden acknowledged in his statement, I'll read his words. He said the jury was under extraordinary pressure. Juries shouldn't be under extraordinary pressure.
Sure they are. Juries should always be under extraordinary pressure. Sorry, guys, if you got jury duty, because you're choosing whether to let a criminal walk or whether or not you find someone innocent who may turn out later to be guilty and can't be tried again. And in the case of a capital murder case, that's pressure. This asshole isn't going to get the death penalty. And what happens if you give the death penalty to someone who says they killed 10 women? And the state makes a case. This person killed 10 women, right? And we give this guy the death penalty. And they carry it out and he died. And then they find out after he's dead, Motang. They find out after he's dead that, yeah, he killed 8 of them. The other 2 he didn't kill, though. 2 of them were that he lied. Or we found him guilty of that, but he didn't actually. Now we can't go try someone else for those 2 women's murders because someone's already been put to death for them. So we can't have another trial. And so that means a murderer or 2 or 5, or if they had assistants or whatever the fuck happened, are walking the planet with impunity. That would be pressure.
They should be able to resolve issues based on the facts and the law.
Yeah, just twiddle their thumbs. How many, where were he had the, okay, so he chopped up how many people did he put in cement? I see. And so you went down, let me see. We've got a little, can I get another note card called Crawl Space? Thanks. I just, I'm not really emotionally invested in this. I don't know how anybody could be. I mean, it's just about, what's his name? John Wayne what? I mean, I like John Wayne. He was a good actor or whatever. That's Gacy. It's just got kind of a nice name to it or whatever. Anyway, so, okay, dead people, crawl space. And this guy, well, let's go on what's there. I mean, what's he really guilty of? Just having, bodies under his house. I don't know that did they prove that he's the one who put them there? That could happen to anybody.
Not on the fear that if they vote for a lesser count, like manslaughter instead of murder, they will be attacked. Remember, they were sent a message by the judge. We're not giving out your names because if we give out your names, you may be in danger. That too sent the message. Once you do unanimous juries, you have to do sequestration. You can't have one without the other, because it sends a message to the jurors that you'll be targeted if you come to the wrong result. And
But you have to define the wrong result.
then they listen and they hear.
Because the other result could be, we're not going to give out your thing, because if you rule against a cop, there might be bad cops that will kill you. Where's the automatic assumption that it is going to be that if you come to, if they'd have gone with manslaughter and put the dude away, that the actual threat was from BLM, who thought the guy should have gotten second-degree murder or should have been tried for first-degree murder in the first place. So these violent people, which you're making up in your fucking head, are going to come kill jurors because they gave somebody manslaughter for something that someone you believe should have been charged with first-degree murder, even though that's not the jury's responsibility at all. What about the fear that if you put a cop away, that you're going to get pulled over and blown away? Right? Why is that not an equal fear? No juror complained.
They hear what's going on in the street. It shouldn't have been allowed.
Well, thank you for drawing attention to it, because
Yeah, finally.
I think a lot of people are afraid to talk about it because emotions are so high in this.
That's why, emotions.
But thank you for calling
I don't know that we can handle it.
it for what it is, because everybody deserves to have their chance. If it's going to impact the rest of their lives, it should at least be fair. So we want to.
It was fair. It was a free and fair trial. It was a free and fair election. We've had a lot of free and fair lately that you guys just don't seem to think is fair.
I have you back on to talk about this, since unfortunately.
Why are there so many picture frames behind him? Because I guess Trump is paying him in paintings.
The case is not going to be going away.
It's not going to go away. And we have new cases. We have the Kim, the officer next door, and she is being prosecuted for a crime that doesn't exist. She didn't commit manslaughter, but there can be pressure on the jury and on the prosecutor to prosecute Kim Potter for something that isn't a crime.
Sure it is. You can be charged with manslaughter for wantonly running over someone in your car, and like, how many hit and runs have they prosecuted where somebody goes, I thought I hit a deer. Well, we now know you hit a person. We're charging you with manslaughter. This is a garbage argument. We'll wait till that comes up.
Something was a tragic.
Because this doesn't really have anything to do with the actuality of the other cases that are there. What they're doing is using the Chauvin verdict, which was completely balanced and valid, and trying to poison it with this idea that they're just going to try and take over and destroy policing, and nobody has a chance anymore. And you watch, this is going to be awful from the get-go, and because it's really not about racial justice or equity or making sure that policing is safer for citizens and police alike and any of that stuff. It's really just about Marxist takeover of police departments, that kind of thing.
Tragic mistake there.
Yes, manslaughter is killing someone even if you didn't mean to. Precisely, Grill in the Mist. I don't know where the shit he gets this.
She made. And of course, the other three officers have been indicted. So this is not the end, and we'll see.
Right, yeah. They helped. They aided and abetted, and it does not look good for them. The only one that might get away with it is the cop that was backing people up. But even that, like,
we'll see if the American system of justice can survive these external pressures.
Just, this is the Huckabee shit again. How weak do they think our country is that it cannot withstand the extraordinary pressures of the shifting norms of society and a movement towards racial, social, and economic equity over time? Again, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing. We don't ask for any favors, just get your foot off our neck, right? These assholes do not believe the U.S. system can survive the removal of the foot off of someone's neck, because if you do, the whole system gets destroyed. This is Ben Shapiro's fear. This is Glenn Beck's fear. This is Alan Dershowitz's fear. This is Huckabee's fear. And no, I honest to God, I'm baffled by this fear.
You're right. Justice as we know it is really changing just because of the outside pressures. Everything's politicized right.
Justice as we know it is changing because of outside. All right. I'm going to try not to get too far afield because I have a couple more clips. But let's see. Let's see. Western. Old West. We've heard a lot about lynching, right? Over time. There was a codified kind of a version that was the norm. What was it actually like to be present at a frontier hanging? Justice sure is changing. What was an Old West hanging like? Hangings on the American frontier could be legal or extra legal. That's fun. Depending on the location and the individual, certainly true. Life in the Old West was harsh and punishments were equally severe. Wild West justice. This looks fun.
Out on the frontier, hangings were more than just a method of executing the guilty. They were a form of entertainment that offered spectators an escape from their everyday lives.
Uh-huh.
Like many modern forms of entertainment, hangings weren't just empty spectacle. They also conveyed important messages to onlookers. Hangings were a stark reminder that while the West may have been wild, law and order still existed there. Today, we're going to take a look at what it was actually like to be at a frontier hanging. But before we get started,
No, I'm gonna give it. Move forward, you swine.
be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and leave us a comment to go to the movies. Frontier hangings were often held on weekends for the exact same reason. It was considered a form of entertainment, and it wouldn't be unusual to see an entire family come to watch. Spectators would often bring blankets and picnic baskets to stake out seats and pass time while waiting for the show. On occasion, attendees could even purchase concessions and souvenirs. How big did the crowds get?
A hot dog with ketchup. A hot dog with ketchup. You hear that, Dane? My kid is as smart as a whip.
It is believed the hanging of convicted murderer Charles Waller, which took place in Marshfield, Missouri in 1867, was attended by approximately 8,000 people.
Yeah, huh? Did they have BLM shirts on? Was there pressure on the jury? Do you think the 8,000 folks that showed up shifted their belief about this no-good, horn-swaggling, cattle-rustling sheep fucker?
When Mary Surratt, Lewis Powell, David Harold, and George Atzerodt were sentenced to hang for conspiring to assassinate Abraham Lincoln, interest was so high, authorities had to make it a ticketed event just to keep the crowds at
Yeah, they sold tickets. I'm sure that didn't sway. There was so much pressure on the jury, you know.
bay. Though thousands applied for them, those tickets went mostly to Union soldiers, court officials, and other dignitaries.
Monopoly?
While the general public couldn't attend the event itself, people still gathered outside the gates of the penitentiary where it was taking place. A contemporary reporter wrote that the streets were filled with restless, impotent people willing to
Yipes. Restless, impotent people.
spend hundreds of dollars
Apparently this... So Republicans.
to get in. He described trainloads of others arriving throughout the day, country roads clogged with foot traffic, and a general air of excitement in the city.
Yeah. So just to clarify, if I may, the idea that suddenly our system of justice is in danger, as if it always had this sort of level of perfection to it, and that it's anything like that.
Right now, and it's like, please just leave our judicial system alone.
Guys, can you just please leave our judicial system alone? Why?
Let it play out in
Let it play out
the courts, because
in the courts, because
that's really the last thing
that's really the last
we have
thing
standing between
we have standing between us
us and anarchy. So
and anarchy is the only thing we have.
thank you, Professor. You're awesome out there. Thank you for just looking.
You're awesome out there, and I mean out there. Don't come here to the studio; it grosses us out. And we have the HR department has told you have to 500 yards. Remember, 500 yards.
At the facts, because being a Democrat, to actually just look at this rationally, is really
Being a Democrat, dude's not a Democrat.
helpful in this environment.
What? I mean, seriously, he voted for Trump twice.
Without going the emotional route.
Thank you.
without going the emotional route. Oh, children.